Ever get this, like, weird feeling where two things, totally unrelated, suddenly feel connected, like you're spotting some hidden pattern? That's me right now with these two reports. One, all about climate change. The other, global wealth. They're just here on my desk, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be a story here.
It is kind of wild how often that happens, right? Like, totally different fields, finding these weird connections, like climate science and, global finance, right? You would think.
Totally different worlds.
But they connect.
Yeah, they do. So, okay, let's break this down. First up, this IPCC report. And just so everyone's on the same page, IPCC, that's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Basically, the world's top climate scientists all in one room. And their message is, it's crystal clear. It's us. Humans are warming up this planet, and it's not some far-off problem anymore. We're at 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels already.
And that's the thing, every little bit of warming, every fraction of a degree, it adds up. It's not just numbers on a chart. Those numbers, they mean something for actual people, for the planet. Each tiny jump makes those really bad impacts, the kind we can't reverse, way more likely. Just picture this. You, living in a coastal city, sea levels rising, millions displaced by, 2050? That's not sci-fi, that's the trajectory we're on.
Okay, yeah, that puts it into perspective. And it's not even just the future, right? This report, it doesn't mess around. It straight up says we're already seeing these impacts right here, right now.
Oh, absolutely. Happening right now.
So we've got, this undeniable climate reality check staring us in the face. And then into the mix comes this other report. This one's by Credit Suisse. And it's all about, global wealth, how money's been moving around the world since 2008. And the headline finding, throws you for a loop. The world getting richer, but all that wealth, nowhere near equally distributed, not even close.
Yeah, and that's the kicker, that unevenness, especially with how fast things are growing in the Asia-Pacific region, a lot of it driven by debt, by the way, that has huge, huge implications for how we even approach tackling climate change. Think about it, different parts of the world, they've got completely different resources to throw at the problem. Some countries, they can afford to go big on renewables, build up defenses against climate impacts, that kind of thing. Others are struggling just to keep their heads above water, meet basic needs, and that's where these two reports, these two seemingly separate issues, they start to paint this really, really complex picture.
And this is where those two worlds, right, climate change and, wealth, where they really start to bump up against each other. This IPCC report, it highlights this number. Okay, ready? 3.3 to 3.6 billion people. Highly vulnerable to climate change.
Yep.
That's billions, right? With a B. And here's the real kicker. They're the ones who did the least to cause this whole mess.
It really drives home the inequality, the injustice at the core of this whole climate crisis. And it's not just about, lacking the money for the big splashy solutions, although that's definitely a part of it. This is about survival, day-to-day survival for billions of people. The heat wave's getting worse, the rain, it's all over the place. Food prices going up, they're already stretched to the limit.
It's like they don't even have a safety net. It's more like, a threadbare, old towel or something. And then the Credit Suisse report, it throws this other idea into the mix. Wealth mobility. Basically, people moving up or down that wealth ladder during their lifetimes. So is that a hopeful thing for those folks most at risk from climate change? If they could climb that ladder, would that give them what they need to weather the storm, so to speak?
It's a good question. We should definitely be asking it. But, and this is a big but, we can't oversimplify things. Just because someone moves up a little doesn't mean the bigger issues, the systemic stuff that made them vulnerable in the first place, just disappear. The report even has some examples. Like farmers, right? In developing countries, they might have a good year, see their income go up, but then, boom, climate disaster wipes them out. Whatever wealth they built, a lot of times it was based on loans anyway, it's just gone.
So it's not even as simple as just earn more money and it'll be fine.
Nope. And the IPCC report really emphasizes this too. Solutions. They need to be about social justice as much as they're about emissions and all that. It has to be about tackling the underlying inequality, giving these communities the tools to adapt. We can't just throw money at this and call it a day.
So we're talking about building resilience, right? But from the ground up. Okay, so if that's what we need to do, we're working on borrowed time as it is, what does that even look like in practice? So we've got to act like yesterday, but we've also got to fix this wealth gap. It's a lot. Does this IPCC report, does it give us anything to work with? Solutions-wise, I mean.
It does. But the big takeaway, urgency. With a capital U, it's got to be big, it's got to be fast, and it's got to be for the long haul. We need to slash those greenhouse gas emissions, yesterday, this decade. Not by 2050 now.
Okay, yeah, no more kicking the can down the road. But how? With this whole global wealth gap thing looming over everything.
Well, that's where the Credit Suisse report, it offers, I don't know, maybe a little bit of hope. It says global wealth, still going up, and emerging markets, they're going to be playing a bigger and bigger role. So the question is, can we take that growth, especially in the places that are most vulnerable, and aim it toward climate solutions?
It's turning money into a climate action tool.
Yeah.
Especially where it's needed most.
Exactly. And both these reports, they're singing the same tune here. It can't just be about cutting emissions. That's important. But it's got to be tied into everything else. Economic growth, social justice, even tech.
We've got to stop treating them like separate things, right?
100%. The IPCC talks about carbon pricing. Putting a price tag on emissions to nudge everyone towards cleaner choices sounds good, but it could also really hurt lower income folks. So you need to design it carefully. Make it fair.
Right, because we can't let the people who did the least to cause this end up shouldering the burden.
Exactly. And that's why, I don't know, it matters for everyone. No matter where you are in the world, rich or poor, this affects you, these reports. They're like a snapshot, a moment in time, showing this crazy world changing so fast, huge challenges, but also huge possibilities.
It's on us to, pay attention, get involved, fight for something better. And look, while you're digging deeper into all this, something to think about, that 1.5 degrees of warming. The IPCC, they talk about this thing called overshoot. We might blow past it temporarily, even if we manage to get things back on track eventually. But even a temporary overshoot could have irreversible impacts. So think about those 3.6 billion people, the ones we talked about, the ones most at risk. What happens to them? Could it make things even more unequal? It's a tough question. No easy answers, but it's something we all need to be thinking about as we figure out the future.